Hey, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back. This is your host, Young Brando, possibly with the last broadcast from New York City. Hopefully, I will join back with you guys immediately once I'm back in Los Angeles, but this might be, who knows, maybe the last one for a while. So we'll talk about watches and we'll start with something that made me laugh a lot. It's a familiar story. It's somewhat of a sad story as well, but the way the newspaper framed it was, I think, really humorous and interesting. So, but before that, I want to alert you to a new watch reveal by one of our community members, JakeBrooks, who is going to share with us, hopefully a little later today, not one, but two new watches. I'm not gonna um, reveal or unpack or announce anything just yet. I want to leave that pleasure for him, but we'll get there soon. So what I wanted to share with you was this piece in the Financial Times today. It's in the luxury goods section and has a very simple title. I tried to buy a Rolex and fell into a gray market for luxe watches. It's written by a Jeff Maish, and he recounts in there his story of trying to get an Oyster Perpetual for his wife in celebration for her 33rd birthday. And obviously, that coincided with the global pandemic. That coincided with a number of different things that were going on in the world, of course, but somehow all of which contributed to the sudden and relatively unannounced ascendance of the gray market in the form of what we can today detect as a bubble. And he does attend to the aftermath as well when he finishes the story at the end of the article. But it was really these wrist shots without the watch that did it for me. I mean, this is just something really precious Financial Times did. Um, it's amazing. And I love also seeing this copyright, right? Where there's apparently an agency for hand models. I'm not getting that kind of job anytime soon, but I would highly recommend that if you're interested in a gig like that, contact Hired Hands Models. What a clever pun, too, in the name. Amazing. Um, and I like this piece, not only because of its humor and, of course, the personal interest story that attends to it, but also because it has an entire midsection, which is the most substantive part of the article, where Jeff Maish reports on that federal case that emerged from the Midwest and specifically from Skokie, Illinois, um, about 15 miles northwest of Chicago. So I don't know if some of you remember, but that there is a lawsuit now making its rounds through the court circuit that basically blames a dealer that will, at least on this channel, for me, will remain unnamed. I don't want to open up any doors for anyone to harass me for it, but they were basically taken to court by three employees they fired for racketeering, racketeering conspiracy. And that's a very serious charge, of course. And they basically used the occasion to the employees who brought the case to the court used the occasion to basically say that they fired us for whistleblowing, which I think is actually a very serious charge that, to me, on an ethical level, goes well beyond the specific case of wristwatches and gray market profiteering, which is already quite severe, and which, if it is proven, hopefully will have consequences both on the legal front and hopefully from Rolex, which is the brand that is at the center of this case, because the place that was the jewelry store that was at the core of this case, at least was, that particular branch was an authorized dealer. I think the name jeweler still holds that kind of privilege, not in that location, however, which is quite telling in and of itself in terms of how Rolex has perhaps started with dealing with this matter. So allegedly, as we like to say, and it's important and it's significant to hear this sort of reporting and read it on the pages of Financial Times, because once again, even though the difficulty of acquiring a Rolex watch from an authorized dealer is by now a very familiar story, I like the way in which the author actually framed it in this continuing investigation and litigation, which can have quite serious consequences for both the primary and secondary market of watches in the United States. So we will be watching that case pretty carefully, the case that brings allegations against an authorized dealer that operates out of the Midwest. Ozzy, how are you doing?
Hey, good. I hope the sound is okay. Connection won't be perfect, but I love these pieces by the FT, actually. And it was just such a piece around the time of like maybe a year after the Batman that made me aware that it wasn't just the Daytona that was going super crazy anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I just also love in this one in particular, I just love the photos that accompany the piece, like an empty Rolex box, wrist shot without a watch, and it's pure work of art, honestly. At this point, I mean, you have to admire both the reporting but also the framing of the story.
I'll have to read that one, but it does seem like the FT does a similar piece like this, once every 2 years. And I encountered a YouTube channel the other day where someone had described how he purchased his first Submariner. And it was really funny because he describes spending a lot of time, years, presumably, saving up enough money to buy a Submariner, and then going to the AD and finding out he can't just buy it. And we take it for granted that this is normal.
Oh man, again, on one level, I mean, it's a ridiculous thing, and the fact that this whole profiteering scheme for some gray market dealers has come at a time that's actually so painful for the world makes it even worse. I mean, we're laughing now. and so was I earlier. But it's actually the luxury watch market today is one aspect that really puts in sharp relief how out of touch some of us are, and I include
Mm,
myself in that group. At least at times we can get caught up in these kind of pursuits, in these kinds of conversations, and
right.
we are not even in the aftermath of the global pandemic. The war is still raging in Ukraine, and with always the possibility of somehow getting out of control and spreading somewhere else,
Hmm.
um, and so much of everything else.
Yeah, this gentleman thankfully had the fortune of experiencing this problem in 2018. So while it might not have been truly difficult if he just tried to play the game just a little bit to actually get a Submariner, he went to David SW, and I think he only paid like $300 over MSRP, which to us it's laughable these days.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to go order my food. I might catch you up later. Good luck with the stream.
Love the drive-in atmosphere. It reminds me of one of my favorite YouTube channels. Actually, I'll be talking about that. All right, nice to
Cheers.
see you.
Catch you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know. I'm not sure if there would be too much overlap between my audience and hers. I would love there to be, honestly, in a rather selfish manner. But I was basically talking about HRH Collection, who is actually a jewelry maker operating out of Southern California, and she has these rants that are usually filmed in her car, and that involves her going into a drive-in, usually to get coffee, but also some sometimes also food, and it's just so funny. Everyone. I think a lot of people here consume a lot of watch content on YouTube, and I'm sure a lot of other content too. I myself, watch the major outlets when it comes to watches, but for the most part, I consume absolute trash on YouTube, except for sports news. I think it's not very high quality content, but I love it. I love it. It's like junk food for the soul. Tim G, hey man, so nice to see you, and thank you for being here. So I wanted to start with this article again, which is very well written, very well framed, and contains, most importantly, as something new and novel, the reporting of that uh, case that is emerging out of Rolex authorized dealer in the Midwest, and that the results of that particular case, whether the allegations are proven or not, will have very important consequences for the primary and secondary markets of watches in the US at the very least. So we should watch it, pardon me, with some sort of interest. Of course, I was also very happy to see the friend of the channel, Eric Wind, being quoted multiple times in the article. He's coming back for an interview early January, where we'll talk a little bit about how vintage design, vintage watch design influences his and Jack Carlson's more recent collaborations with Seiko, of which they had once a year already since 2021. So I expect it to, come back, even though those creations were already sold out in the primary market. So I think it will be very fruitful to think together. And I think it will also provide an occasion again, at least for a few minutes at the end of the broadcast, at the end of the interview, for some of you guys to come in and ask some questions, regarding vintage watches, regarding the vintage watch market, to someone like Eric Wind, who is, of course, by now a very well-respected authority on vintage watches in terms of dealers. He's really, at least in my humble opinion, one of the handful people on this side of the Atlantic that I respect and would actually trust fully. And also, I like the fact that he focuses on his strengths and has really carved, I think, a very important niche by focusing on vintage and by really seeking out examples that become educational, right? And that's something reflected, of course, through so much that he has written, through so much he has recorded as well, in terms of the reference points, videos, for example, that he filmed on Hodinkee, on the Submariner, on the Explorer, on the GMT Master, and it's really just the beginning. Hey, Nick is here. How are you doing, man? It's so nice to see you. I like this new logo. That's a beautiful piece. Well, JB is not on board yet, but I'm sure he will be. He'll be very soon, and we will get to it in due time. In the meantime, I wanted to actually talk about a beautiful piece that was recently released by Langot Heine, really as a limited edition for a Hong Kong based dealer, and chances are that they're all sold out already, but it is a very nice watch design, and it also has a complication, which is really a regulation module in the form of a remontoire. I think that could be very interesting. This was basically a piece that was built on their Friedrich II, and it was a piece that was sold as a prototype for an amount that surpassed 100,000 euros in a Philips auction very recently. And again, it was one of those pieces that Philips auction house, Philips watches, Bax Rousseau has been developing this program, basically where they actually collaborate with watchmakers for new watches, for special editions, for limited runs, which is something, again, that I appreciate. I do, as someone who's a fan of vintage watch design, vintage horological pieces. I always appreciate when contemporary brands collaborate with auction houses whose traditional strengths have always relied on that sort of expertise. even though, of course, that's no longer exclusively the case. And even you can even say, at least for the last couple of years, in fact, there was this with the resurgence of the gray market for contemporary watches, for watches that are still in production. A lot of the offerings in auctions have skewed increasingly towards selling basically new watches, unworn watches, which is something that I try to accept as the reality of the market, which is something that I'm powerless to contest, anyways. But I find it a little sad, honestly. And for that reason, I actually appreciate it when the auction houses, rather than simply becoming yet another gray market dealer themselves, take these sorts of initiatives and open it up for collaboration to influence more directly what is going on in the contemporary watch market, rather than just selling stickered or new watches, contemporary pieces that they acquire on the secondary market. So I appreciate this particular model, the Langon Heine Friedrich II remontoire, that is this time produced in 9 pieces. The Lavish Attic is the name of the Hong Kongese dealer. And in a way, I know I like the watch, the Hector, which was Langon Heine's sports model, so to speak. But there's a sense that this perhaps with the black enamel dial, with the large Arabic numerals, as well as that oversized 00 at 12 o'clock, is also a very specific look, very sporty look. I like those lozenge slash diamond hands as well. I think that adds to the sporty vibes, sporty intentions of the design. And even though we have kind of become used to the remontoire through especially F.P. Jean's popularization, it's not necessarily the kind of mechanism of regulation that we see in other brands that are somewhat accessibly priced, right? The remontoire still remains a watch, a mode of regulation that is preserved for a very specific segment of independent makers. So for Langon Heine to first do a prototype, now do a 9-piece limited run, this time with the number 9 accented in red rather than the 00, gives me some hope that they might perhaps eventually make a more serious production run, more numerous production run of something like this. And that's, again, Langon Heine is not necessarily a budget brand. It's not necessarily an affordable watch brand per se, but it does occupy that kind of sweet spot between what are already quite hefty sums of money for luxury watches and what are really house purchase money of a lot of independent makers who sell a lot of times simple time-only watches at 6 figures, if not more. So it's nice to see now having at least a limited run of this constant force mechanism watch that has a very beautiful movement, exquisite decoration, and finally also relatively rare black enamel dial, which happens to be one of the more difficult colors to achieve when it comes to enamel. Ozzy's back.
Hey.
Jake, he's still preparing, but
I realize my sound is really terrible, but yeah, what can I do?
I love.
So does that constant force mechanism, is that the repertoire d'elegant that you highlighted to me the other day?
Love that you brought two different French words in place of two other French words. Yes, remontoire d'égalité. That's the one that the artificial intelligence described in ways that most of us cannot imagine in terms of coherence, in terms of applicability and practical explanation. It was great.
So it is using one of those?
Yes, this is
okay.
Has a mechanism that provides constant force to the movement, so the accuracy and precision remains the same over the time of the charge, right? So the watch does not become less accurate when it's not fully wound. Right, and actually, the website itself has a great explanation. This model, Friedrich II Remontoire, is equipped with a complicated mechanism to improve the accuracy, which is remontoire. The so-called constant force mechanism compensates for the decreasing force of the tension spring, which is what happens, of course, when your watch is not fully charged, whether it is hand wound or recharged by the self-winding rotor of an automatic mechanism. Its energy tension. Sorry, go ahead.
It is interesting that type of accuracy or inaccuracy with the lack of that constant force mechanism is not an accuracy discrepancy that you would be able to identify on a timograph. Is that the right word? The machine that gives you a quick understanding of the regulation of the watch.
I'm laughing a little bit because I'm being tested by some of my audience, not only in terms of horological knowledge. This is a new pastime, I think. Hans says he knows his philosophy, so I look forward to reading it and answering, because he was serving me a Socrates quote: "Prefer knowledge to wealth, for one is transitory and the other perpetual." Love it. Good evening to you too, Hans. Love that. Yeah, and you have become a master quickly, Hans, of the Socratic question yourself. So I appreciate your presence. Yeah, so this so-called constant force mechanism compensates for the decreasing force of the tension spring. Its energy tensions a storage spring every 5 semi-oscillations, which constantly transmits its power to the escapement. Right? It's kind of a gatekeeper, let's say, right? Which lets that amount of energy every 5 semi-oscillations in this case. Sometimes the maker would specify, like this is a 1 second remontoire, right? Which means it does that every second, that transmission every second, which means also that those remontoirs, for example, can be coupled with the seconds hand to make a deadbeat seconds, right? So there are different uses, some of which can be impressive, but the main use, or spectacular, I should say, perhaps, but the main use of the remontoire is to provide constant force to the watch. So the amplitude remains the same, whatever the winding is in terms of the hairspring, and whatever the charge is in terms of either the hand winding or self winding.
Is this COSC certified?
Well, that's the funny thing, right? Because a lot of times when people use these sorts of constant force devices or regulation mechanisms like the remontoire or like the tourbillon, they don't bother to chronometer certify them. I think the only person who is crazy and perfectionist enough, I shouldn't say only, but one of the only people who does that, because he's a perfectionist, is Carl Friedrich Schäufele, who runs Chopard and Ferdinand Berthoud. So it's really the LUC Chopard watches that he makes who have, like, that have a tourbillon, but also are chronometer certified or something. So usually when this happens, they don't, they don't do that.
It is very funny and interesting because these, like the tourbillon, the accuracy improvement complications are completely not redundant, but pointless, right? In the grand scheme of things, we've all had to move on from the idea of perfect accuracy, but we also cherish the goal anyway.
Again, by the way, this is the kind of caliber, by the way, since it's located on the escape wheel, it is responsible for the jump of the small second hand every second. So basically those small seconds are also dead seconds, apparently, in the lavish attic Friedrich II remontoire. I love the case design on this as well. Again, I know a lot of the Lang & Heine watches can be acquired taste, but those three-pronged lug design always intrigued me, so I appreciate it. Yes, JLC used to. Again, we talked yesterday about JLC's kind of trajectory, which has moved away to a certain extent from extremely complicated watches or horological, flex of horological mastery at the serial production level to a heritage kind of brand that rests on exciting new designs that iterate what has become recognizable for their brand. And you can see it in the Reverso, you can see it in the Polaris, right? Which one complication that they keep reiterating in a less limited production is, of course, their alarm watches, which is a variation on the Memovox theme, so to speak. But yes, the deadbeat seconds watch may, unfortunately for now, I don't know if JLC still has their deadbeat seconds in the current production. Yeah, I'm not sure if the what they call true seconds, actually, right? The geophysic model, I'm not sure if it's still being produced. But hey, for the collector, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means you can perhaps get even better deals on the secondary market. But I don't think they have it as part of their current production as we speak. Meech is here. Nice to see you, man.
G'day, Meech.
Saad says, Merry Christmas to everyone. Boston Collector joins him in the sentiment. Happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, happy Festivus, whatever it is that we are celebrating. I join you in that. Saad says, Rolex doesn't need any fancy tourbillon to make accurate watches. Plus minus 2 sec is class. Look, I mean, Saad, I completely understand that after all, tourbillons were all the rage somehow on wristwatches earlier in this century, but they were actually a mechanism that was invented for the pocket watch, right? Since the pocket watch, for most of its time of use, remains in your pocket and in a single position. So the tourbillon was basically establishing those terms, so that the watch does not start screwing one way or another in terms of its daily life. With wristwatches, it is truly a flex. It really is not that necessary, although it can still improve accuracy. But it is mostly liked for the aesthetics. If you have a 1 minute tourbillon, of course, you can use it as a kind of small seconds hand as well. So it really, I think, at the end of the day, and this is something that Wei Ko mentions a lot of times, and that I really appreciate in terms of his observation and phrasing. After the quartz crisis, watchmaking has basically become a way of finding different and mostly artistic and poetic ways of expressing time rather than achieving accuracy and precision necessarily. And Ozzy has just mentioned that as well, right? That we do appreciate the effort when it comes to mechanical watches in terms of in terms of preserving constant force, in terms of achieving accuracy and precision. On the other hand, we also know that what we strap on our wrist is not an atomic clock, right? And that it might never have the accuracy of the clock on our microwave and in our smartphone. Hans has an interesting question, and I would love to direct this to Ozzy when he can respond. I know the answers can be highly subjective, but which watch brand do you think has the highest number of aesthetic designs and classic looks?
This one's kind of tailor-made for Rolex. I gotta say, most brands are lucky to have a single design that reaches that stratosphere. Cartier maybe have two, JLC one maybe. I think Rolex have three, and that's incredible. I think they have three. Maybe it's four.
I think you began it just in the right way, which is, in a way that I always like to phrase it as well. Usually people combine those two specific phrases into one to say an icon, right? And I appreciate actually, again, Hans's precision in saying aesthetic designs and classic looks, which broaden somehow the spectrum of that question, but I would also be forced to say one. But I will complicate it from a different perspective, because at the end of the day, Rolex really has, at least in its contemporary production, just one design. It's called Oyster Perpetual. That's one
I
design
guess so.
that has so many different iterations, and I completely agree with you, right? You know, the iterations in terms of giving that design different looks, I would say maybe even has more than three, you know, because the Daytona is an icon. The GMT Master has arguably surpassed the Submariner in the professional lineup. So that already gives us three. But then again, you know, the Day-Date, even though it's been surpassed as the brand's most popular watch by the Daytona, and perhaps as a canvas to do all these special things for Rolex, the Day-Date has not been completely replaced either. So easily,
Right.
you can always expand that in so many other ways. So the simple answer is one word, Rolex. The more difficult answer is Rolex doesn't have more than one design, just looks, just vibes, as they say. Floodland, nice to see you, man. Whole Milk says Seiko. And again, I don't, by the way, again, I think my credentials by now as a Rolex fanboy should be unimpeachable. I don't necessarily say this as a bad thing. It's they have one solid design that they iterate, that they reiterate, and that they employ as variation on the theme over and over, and they have really perfected the formula in a way. So who can blame them? But it is, you know, it is my current, conundrum with the watch manufacturers in general, and with Rolex in particular, that a lot of times the new releases seem very unimaginative, right? You know, that it becomes as simple as offering a new color on the dial, a new combination on a rotational bezel, so on and so forth. Whole Milk, I don't necessarily disagree, but I think the way Hans phrases the question, again, makes it very subjective, and certainly turns it into a question that's more than quantity, but rather quality, which can only be subjectively judged, of course, not. So the answers we provided, Ozzy or me, are at the end of the day quite opinionated, quite partial, and quite subjective. And again, this is another subjective opinion, so take it with a pinch of salt, because I love Seiko as much as the next guy. I'm in fact wearing a Seiko, but you can always say that Seiko's designs, by and large, are much less original than many other brands. I mean, Rolex at least had decades of trying to come up with and improve upon producing waterproof, watertight, dust-proof, self-winding kind of mainstay that then they started reiterating. Whereas a lot of what are Seiko's own iconic models by now have their roots and origins elsewhere a lot of times. Saad, Flood has an interesting question. Is the Ballon Bleu iconic or not popular enough? Again, very, very subjective, this use of the word iconic. I mean, look, I have no problem recognizing the tank and the Santos in its own way as icons, but then, you know, again, then what about all these other popular variations of the tank? Are they icons in their own way? What about the Pasha? What about the Ballon Bleu? I guess the counter argument that people will use is that those are much more divisive of opinion. Those are so-called segmenting designs in marketing language, right? They appeal to a particular taste rather than having the sort of universal appeal that Tank has had, rather than having both the historic importance and the aesthetic relevance that the Santos has, for example, for being the first wristwatch designed for men, so on and so forth. And yes, I will reiterate again, you know, something that I always say: most brands are lucky enough to have one icon, one definitive model in their roster, in their archive. You know, Jaeger-LeCoultre has the Reverso, Audemars Piguet has the Royal Oak, Rolex has a handful, right? Cartier has a couple or a few, depending on what your perspective is. So I think this is, Hans, I think this is a very fruitful question and certainly something interesting for us to pursue. Oh, JB, thank you so much. $9.99 US. Thank you so much. Unboxing upcoming in 10 minutes. Thank you so much. Aiden, nice to see you. Merry Christmas to you. And thank you for reminding people to hit the like button, upvote the stream. It is always helpful. It does increase exposure. It really, really matters quite a bit. And we're looking forward to JB joining us just in a bit for a double unboxing. So I look forward to it. And I know he has been here, so he's probably preparing a kind of special treat for us. So I look forward to it. Aiden, obviously, you know, Meech has his hang-ups, so you have to learn to take him less seriously at times. So Saad says, I would like to bring to your notice a watch. It was one of one with a special dial. Search for Rolex Daytona Tariq Shah. He was at one time a supplier of stones to Rolex. Floodland sends us a super sticker, $3, with the thumbs up. Wow. Both a reminder for people to upvote and a very generous contribution indeed. So let's see this Rolex Daytona Tariq Shah. Images. I see a lot of presidents. Trying to see if I can find this Daytona. Rolex Daytona Tariq Shah. It's one that was sold by Sotheby's, perhaps. Let's see. I think this is a nice one. If it is not, we can at least have seen this beautiful piece. This is a 5-digit in two-tone, 16523, which implies, of course, that this is running on Rolex's iteration of that one of the very first integrated self-winding chronograph movements in the world, which is the Zenit El Primero, caliber 400 in Zenit's iteration, 4030 in the Rolex jargon. And this is a piece that is executed in two-tone and has a special semi-precious stone dial that they expressed as Cœur du Rubis, as Sotheby's has it, and it is also set with brilliant cut diamonds. Meech, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, Lord?
Nice to see you. How you been, man?
Gotta be honest, quite miserable and depressed.
Why is that?
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we've been in a snowstorm for the last 3 days here, so can't really do a whole lot.
I mean, isn't that kind of the high point for those gentlemen's clubs that you like so much? Isn't it a good time to go to a gentleman's club?
Well, yes, normally it would be, but you know, what's the point of going to a gentleman's club if there's no entertainment? Since the entertainment cannot make it inside.
Oh, they can't?
No, actually, so in a nutshell here, the majority of the state has been shut down, actually. So, yeah. So in a nutshell, like if you're on the road, you're on the road at your own risk. So.
I see. And this, by the way, this watch, guys, was one that was sold in last November's Sotheby's auction in Geneva. So, and I'm trying to find, because I haven't signed onto my account here, so I'm trying to find what it sold for in the background. Let's see. I actually don't get it why they need you to sign in for something like that, but hey. Strange. Yeah, it was sold for 283,500 Swiss francs. 283 and a half. The estimate was 100 to 200,000 Swiss francs. And it sold for, in fact, above the high ceiling of that estimate, with the rubellite dial that is also diamond set. Yeah, Mitch. Well, I mean, you know, I joke about this sometimes. You know, I had to move to Los Angeles to come to terms with the fact that I was just a miserable person rather than someone being affected by seasonal depression. Um, Now I realize that I've been happier in the last few months, that I consider myself really grateful and fortunate. And even though the wind is raging outside and it's been raining for a few days, still a handful of days when I've been in New York, I'm happy. I'm happy. I feel like, you know, everyone's situation is different, of course. So I don't mean to say that you know, I don't mean to question your feelings, but sometimes, you know, the problems are, for better or worse, different and perhaps deeper than just the weather. And I hope you are attending to them. I hope you are taking care of yourself.
I mean, to be fair, Lord, I mean, even if I was someplace sunny and 75, I'd find a way. Yeah, I definitely find a way to complain about something, you know?
Right. I mean, that's me again. That's why, you know me. I identify with you on so many different levels, and that's exactly how I feel. You know, when I came to Los Angeles, I was like, oh, you know, it never snows here. It barely rains. I will always be happy because I wasn't unhappy. I wasn't happy in New York because it was snowing a lot in the winter, and it was really cold and this and that. Then I quickly realized that that wasn't my problem. I had other kinds of issues in my personal life, especially in my relationships that had nothing to do with the weather, that had nothing to do with snow or rain or whatever else. Oh, Saad says it's not rubellite, it's heart of ruby. Yes, I mean in French that's what they say, cœur de rubis. Um, let's see what the catalog essay says. To the best of our knowledge, this unusual Zenith Daytona appears fresh to the market and represents the first time a Daytona with a Cœur de Rubis dial has been available in an auction. Originally, this timepiece was an order specially made for Mr. Tarek Shah, who was at the time one of Rolex's precious and ornamental stones supplier. He made this special request and supplied the stone that Rolex would use to make the dial. It says, distinguished by its heartstone dial, this reference might be mistaken for having a rubellite dial. However, the material used here is known as cœur de rubis, heart of ruby, which differs somewhat in appearance and color, providing a more uniform and much deeper red. The stone is incredibly fragile and become even more so as it is worked thinner and thinner by expert craftsmen, of course, to create that particular slice for the dial. It is, as a result, a material seldom used, and those that dare usually make only very few. Each piece is ultimately a unique piece. So thank you, Saad, for first of all drawing our attention to this particular watch, but also clarifying the difference between rubellite, which is perhaps more common, and heart of ruby, cœur de rubis, which actually forms the dial of this watch. Hans with a stoic point here. My main man nicely sums things up. The secret of happiness, you see, is not found in seeking more, but in developing the capacity to enjoy less. Aiden asks to you, Meech, what's the favorite watch that you own currently?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question, isn't it? I'd say off the cuff, I'd probably say the Batgirl. It's probably the most fulfilling, I guess. Considering it's the one I got the most shit for in the community. And yeah, I mean the bracelet's comfortable, and I had to wait a long time for it. So, but funny enough, I was supposed to get the date back from service here, and yeah, that's not gonna happen. They shipped it out. What day did they ship it out? Wednesday. Um, and despite FedEx best efforts, it will be here after Christmas, which is unfortunate.
I forgot to unmute myself. That sucks. I mean, you had, I don't know about the monetary amount, but you had a lot of emotional investment in that new date acquisition. Um, what happened there exactly? What was wrong with it, and where did they ship it out to?
I don't know. Actually, this would be a great question for Saad, General Saad, because he could probably answer this the best. But in a nutshell, here, when the date and the day complication would not move, Omega, yeah, my Omega rep kind of just chalked it up to saying this, saying that it's considered to be a vintage model, and vintage models are not up to date with the current models. So therefore, they suggested that the watch needs to be wound like a manual wind every other day. So the power reserve can power both the date complication and the timekeeping. Now, I did talk to a Rolex rep on the Twin Cities and asked him about the same thing, and he said, "Well, he said it's not too uncommon for vintage models." He said, "Although I would like to declare that I really don't find yours to be a true vintage." Um,
Right.
but he said it's not uncommon for the older models to need manual winding every time. But he said that's a bit of a strange scenario. He said, however, the power reserve is connected to the date complication as well. So he said it's a very. He said I'm not going to call them a liars, but he said it's a strange thing to kind of problem shoot.
Hmm.
In the meantime, we'll see what happens. I know they sent me a couple gift cards. Maybe it is user error on my end. It's probably the better case scenario. Sure, I look a little foolish for not knowing how to run a day-to-day complication, but I'd rather it be that than I actually have to have the watch torn apart and reserviced and everything else in between. So time will tell.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think, look, it's nitpicking really. What is vintage, what is not. Um,
I
of
wouldn't
course.
really consider 2014 a vintage though. I wouldn't even consider it neo
Oh,
vintage, honestly.
no, no. I mean, look, in terms of wine terminology, which I care very little about, and I know even less. Um, one would stick to a 20-year threshold. So anything younger than 20 years would not be even counted as vintage. When it comes to watches, I like to think about uh, particular brands in a very specific way, but even then, it's really a matter of subjective opinion, and you have to account for that opinion to be responsible, right? For example, if you want to say, um, For me, Rolex vintage is roughly before mid 80s. You have to say, well, it's because this was, for example, before they started switching to sapphire crystals all across the board, rather than preserving them just for the more luxurious, limited, and precious metal models. This is when they were still using tritium as the luminous material on the dials, and that would take another decade and a half to transition at any rate. You can think about the build and wearability of the bracelets, etc. But anyway, so you have to account for it. I mean, if you say 1989 is a cutoff for Patek Philippe for the vintage era to transition into the modern, you have to say something about that to account why that would be. And in the same way, I mean, in Rolex, of course, 2014 is not vintage by any means. That sounds like a very flimsy excuse, even though I always kind of do a few turns whenever I wear even my automatic watches. That shouldn't be necessary for the basic function of the watch.
Right. And the only, I guess the only thing I'm going to give them a little leeway on is I never wound and set the watch myself, actually. So when I was up there, they were quite busy, obviously, with the holiday shoppers and whatnot. So the watch kind of seen about 3 to 4 different hands before it got to me. And I remember a lady had actually given it to me, I believe. And she said, "Is this yours?" And I said, "Yes." I just purchased it. And she said, "Here you go." And the time and the date was set. So amongst the rush, maybe she just wound it enough to see the watch start keeping time, and maybe it just wasn't a full wind, and therefore it quite possibly didn't have enough power reserve to complete all of its functions in one sitting. But like I said, we will see. If it happens again, I'm probably just going to send it over to my good friends over at Wixon's Jewelers in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Certified in Patek Philippe and Rolex service, and they will just try to and rebuild it.
That's great. Yeah. I'm not sponsored by them, so. Saad says that's a totally false statement. The watch has enough power to change day and date at midnight, no problem. Check your mainspring, which may be broken or might need rewinding. And Boston says 2 issues, probably either a misaligned date wheel or power reserve. As too low, I was like, what has loved? What's love got to do with it? Both are fixable, so it shouldn't cause any issues in the future. I don't think, again, I'm sure it's something they can fix. And once things are fixed, I'm not sure. There's not much in the world of watches, mechanical watches, that cannot be taken care of. The problem here is, for better or worse, and again, I'm not trying to cast aspersion on the dealer or whoever it was who sold you the watch, but it's first impressions. You buy a watch and you immediately run into an issue, it can spoil your entire experience of that watch for good. So it's
absolutely, and it's even I don't know, it's even a little bit more difficult when I do get a call from my Parmigiani dealer offering me 2 Parmigianis that are extremely hard to get right now, and I could use that date as leverage.
So you were offered, as far as, am I allowed to say one of them?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to take them because, quite frankly, I just can't afford it, financially speaking. I'm broke.
You were offered the GMT Rattrapante
Mhm.
for the Tonda and Tonda PF, and what else?
I was also offered the the standard Parmigiani.
Tonda
The
PF, the
Yeah,
sports one. With which dial?
the stainless steel. Actually, I don't know. Actually, I'm assuming black dial or blue dial. I don't know. He never declared. I did ask for him to send some photos, but I think he kind of just brushed me off the shoulders, which I don't quite blame him. When I told him I couldn't swing it. Um, but yeah, I was offered both of those. And he did say he's like, man, he's like, I'm gonna have no problem selling these. He said, don't worry about it, which I believe him. I don't believe why he would struggle to sell at the very least the GMT.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure he will find a buyer quite soon. Even though, again, they are becoming a little more available and should be. I don't know about the GMT actually, so I shouldn't speak very quickly. But
GMT is still hard to get. That's still hard to get.
so on the secondary market, you should be able to get the standard Tonda PF with the micro rotor movement by now, and possibly at a discount in in our terminology, which means that you
I don't
find
know honestly. When I looked at one for because I was gonna get one pre-owned, and if I remember right, they were about 10 grand over.
at how many months ago that was.
About 3 months ago.
Yeah, things have
No,
changed.
not even that. Not even that. Because I inquired about it in November, early November. I inquired about it because I
With
remember hearing from both the Colorado dealer and a Minneapolis dealer saying it's possible to get one hopefully before Christmas.
right, which is exactly what happened, basically.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can tell you that even on everyone's favorite overpriced secondary market platform, Chrono 24, there's one that's available at list price now. So you can certainly find one that's cheaper than list on the secondary market for sure. But yeah, again, things change very quickly on the secondary market, and it's literally crashing. So I wouldn't be surprised um, that even the GMT one will start coming down to list quite soon.
Yeah, I agree. It should be interesting to see if the lady size 36 mil Parmigiani holds up because those are in demand. Though, if I remember right, I
Right.
believe the wait list when I inquired in Colorado, they said it was a 2-year wait list.
Oh wow. Well, I mean, in again, it might be. Chapek did something like that almost immediately, because the standard model they have for the Antarctique, which is their sports model, I think is somewhere between 41, and they released a 38.5 version almost immediately. And in this case, again, there's a reduced size version, and in one way you can say it's just as you like to say, lady size. But it's also a different watch, which has some redeeming qualities to it, in the sense that it has, even in the steel model. Let me see. It has a rotor movement rather than a micro rotor, which has a longer power reserve. But also, where is it? Also, I was gonna say, has no interruption on the dial, right? So no date. So it's in a way a more streamlined design, in addition to being smaller, with a longer power reserve and only a slightly thicker case. So it's still a very nicely proportioned watch. And in stainless steel, it's also cheaper than the full sized. Hey, why not?
Yeah, it should be interesting. And I don't know. I don't know if these were in small production or not. I don't know if Parmigiani's testing the waters and seeing how well they'll sell or not. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that by and large, Parmigiani is not a brand that produces a lot of watches. But that being said, uh, it seems silly, like Whole Milk was saying. It seems silly that Parmigiani Fleurier, being in a situation that they would be hard to get, since we know, like, the kinds of deals you can have on so much of their catalog, which has quickly become an archive because they were phasing them out. I think, look, I mean, they benefited to a certain extent from that bubble that was growing in the market, and I think they will quickly find that the reality is a little harder to stomach, honestly. So I hope they adjust themselves accordingly, because again, a lot of those brands that suddenly became hyped up in the during this 2-3 year boom, if they don't continue to offer something new, something unique, something that distinguishes them from the rest of the market, will quickly realize that they won't be able to replicate that success over and over, because there are already enough established independents. There's already so much demand for the big four. It's hard to have breathing space. It's hard to have life for so many other brands.
Yeah, that's very true.
Saad says, I've had from 4-digit day date to the latest one, never experienced any issues. 3155 is one of the easiest calibers to fix. So hopefully they will solve your problem, and hopefully solve it quite quickly. And again, ultimately, I hope it doesn't ruin your experience with the watch overall.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of too late already. To be frank, I could take it or leave it at this point. I'm just glad I never paid full retail for a day date. Because even I looked at the hang tag with this one, and this one at retail back in the day would have been, well, it was at 31,895 if I remember the tag correctly, and you'd round up on that with Minnesota State tax, so it'd probably be about current price of a day date right now, which would be roughly 33,885. But we'll see. We'll see what happens, and perhaps it was perhaps a little bit premature of me to not let the watch die and then start all over again. Because as soon as it happened, I just sent it off right off the bat. So
Did
perhaps
you?
it's a bit of whoopsie on my end.
I mean, did they ultimately tell you that they would give you your money back if it's not something they can fix?
Oh yeah, so they were more than accommodating. I've done business with them before, so in a nutshell, they gave me two ultimatums. The owner called me up and he said, "Hey, I heard you had some issues." He said that's unacceptable. So basically, the option was this: I get my Submariner back, all my cash back. I threw a little bit on a card. And then they would waive the restocking fee, and it would be they, basically said we'll get it right the next time on your next purchase. Or the alternative was, I got jumped. I jumped the service line, and I got pretty much priority one. And then got $100 back on my card. Although they kind of altered that a little bit. They gave me $100 gift card to Amazon, and then $100 gift card to a local steakhouse near me. And then they offered me a 3-2-1, but he said later down the road, he said, "Hey, I misspoke." He said, "We can't get the 3-2-1." But he said, "I know we can get a Snoopy in for you if you wanted to go that route." So yeah, more than accommodating on wanting to fix their mistake. So
Okay, that sounds good. JJ says hello from Michigan. Nice to see you, JJ. It's snowing in Michigan. Well, all right, we're still and the wind is, I think, gonna blow the door open here shortly. It's the storm is raging. Jake is doing the unboxing, but I think he's taking his time to prepare at this point, which it has taken a little bit. In fact, more than an hour and a half, and as it happens, sorry, more than an hour. And as it happens, this is one of those days where I can't stay longer than 4, maybe 4:30. So hopefully it will turn up. I'm still waiting. By the way, Mitch, would you, if you had not bought the day date, right? If you had simply returned it when they offered you the first option, would you have gone for a Parmigiani instead? Because you said you don't want to add.
yeah, I probably would have, honestly. I probably would have.
And would that have been the one pure and simple or the GMT one?
I would have considered the GMT, because I know sales rep kind of laughed at me. He said, "Well," he said, "you told me a few weeks back that GMT was a little bit too much money for you, considering it didn't even have a date complication." I said, "Yeah, but," I said, "it's a hype piece. I need the hype piece." So I probably would have considered the GMT. I probably would have had. I know I actually would have had to make the drive all the way up there to physically see him in hand, and I ultimately probably would have gone with the Parmigiani instead, because I believe that is a 40 mil. Um, and I know that one would have fit me a little bit better. But I would have considered both very seriously.
How are we doing? You're muted, JB. I don't know. Not muted on my end. No. Boston Collector has a quick question. As a watch collector, how do you balance looking for a watch versus buying something when an opportunity comes up? I don't usually buy things simply because an opportunity comes up. Again, Boston, you probably know from your own case that people who are bitten by the bug usually are looking for more than one thing at once, especially if you are not already sitting on dozens and dozens of watches. So chances are that I have been, working behind the scenes for 2 or 3 things that I've been researching for. And that time for me, the time for study and research is sometimes years. I end up usually taking the chance when an opportunity comes up on something that I'm already looking for. I have never made an impulse purchase on something like a watch. You know, even the Seikos that I have bought were something that I was expecting, right? You know, something that I had wanted to buy for a while, and I see the right deal and I get it. You know, the king turtle I bought was, for example, something that was already attractive in terms of list price, but I still found one that was barely worn and heavily discounted on eBay, and that's how I got it. That's just how I operate. I'm a marvelous Marvin Hagler with two G's. That's my philosophy. So that's the balance for me. That inevitably, and I think this is the case with most collectors, I have more than one thing that I'm looking for, and there is a chance that something that may not have been the absolute priority would present a better opportunity, would present a better value proposition, and then I go for that. But for the most part, my preferences are tilted towards looking for something specific, researching it obsessively, comprehensively, and then finally sourcing an example. JB.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we've got a little bit of an unboxing to share. Two
Yes.
unboxings, actually. Should we save the big one for the second one, or do we want to go right for it?
Let's start with quote unquote the smaller one. I think they're both very nice watches, but you know which one is you know, a little more.
Let me see if I can switch the camera to the other side. Let me see. Maybe for quality. Okay. This one came as a naked piece, but we'll slowly pull it out.
Ooh.
Can't tell much from the buckle.
No, because that's a generic buckle, right? Oh, now I think most people can. Ta-da.
7806 Breitling Navitimer from 1972.
Oh, nice.
This is the
Not
big
the original
eye.
strap, though, is it?
Not the original strap. I'm still working on an original strap. But if you look, it's in really, really good condition. It's got really nice play on the top. And when you look at this watch, you see quite a busy dial, right? You got all this writing that's all over it. But if you look, you can see the white texture of the hands is just enough to set it off against all the other kind of cream colored.
Yeah.
So you can see an MK1 dial will have 3 different subdials here as far as the subdial marker. And then you've got a little bit of a different hands here on the MK1. My only, I guess, complaint about this, the date window is maybe a little bit off. But overall in really, really great shape.
Yeah, still looks great. Congratulations.
Yes. Quick correction, JMB. Miles wore an 806 rather than 7806, which does not have a date. I have a picture of it on my Instagram, which I can show off later, but I don't want to interrupt JB's presentation.
So I'm going to put it on the wrist. Give me one moment. I'll put it on the wrist and we can
please
take a look. I've been wearing this one almost non-stop since I got it. And it's a manual wind. So need to work on the original bracelet, but man, this is the king of cool right here. Jerry Seinfeld was kind of famous. He famously wears this big eye. You'll see him a lot of times wearing this model. But it's a throwback. It's a vintage. It's one where the price I just for what it is and the condition that it was, I've always kind of wanted this one. And it's easy, nice and easy manual wind. Shall we move to the next one?
Yes, I also love the pouch they gave you. That purple detail inside the pouch is great, and
reminds me of a Corona pouch.
And one thing that I really like, in addition to everything else that goes on a quote-unquote reverse panda dial of a Navi timer with a slide rule, is also the red accents. If you can see, which is present both on the slides and the date. So I like that.
For sure. And do you want me to get the UV light out and show? Maybe show that?
Yes, why not? Please. And Gentlemen's Hangout, JJ, nice to see you, man.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the UV, but the picture that I sent you, Lord, should be able to give you a little bit of an idea.
Yes, I used it for the thumbnail, as you remember, JB. I thought that was a very nice picture, actually. I like that sort of.
The red that's on the outside of these really kind of comes to life under UV.
Let me see. I will interrupt you for a second to share the picture that you sent me.
Certainly. I'll get the other one ready.
This is it.
Very cool.
Yeah, those are the red details. And yes, again, this is the 70s model, right? The early 70s model of the Navi timer, which has the addition of dates. The movement is a hand-wound Varjou 7740, whereas its predecessors, 806, had Venus 178 and no date display. Earlier examples of the Navi timer 806, of course.
All right.
Oh, you're ready?
We're ready.
Let me see. Oh.
We've got a little bit of cover here because it had some writing on this that would give it away. But do we have any guesses thus far on this from the box?
It's a vintage Rolex.
Vintage Rolex for sure.
I don't want to give away any more.
I had to pack it a certain way to make sure that no one could guess this. But some of you may still be able to guess it just from the booklet. The booklet date, 1996.
Man, I remember those days.
Put this to the side. And let's remove this guy. We ready?
Yes, I love that box. Woo!
Should we show it?
Yes, please. We're dying to see it. Ta-da! Zaynit. Daytona 16520.
Ooh, hello.
Ah, it's so beautiful. And looks pristine.
It does look amazing. One of the cool things with it, you get the bezel cover that'll never probably be on there again.
The hang tag.
The hang tag. Also, the second hang tag. And I'm not going to show you the full serial here.
Of
But
course.
just understand that there's a couple of 8s in here that may be collectible for the next market.
Yeah.
And along with the booklet.
And as you can see, guys, by the way, sorry for interrupting, but that was the 2 numbers lower there was of course, the reference number, and then the reference number for the bracelet, if you noticed on that tag that also has the serial number.
So the card that has the punch out as well that matches.
Love it. It's an absolute full set.
Absolutely. So very Merry Christmas here.
Yes, sir. And JMB, actually, this is something that I completely agree on. I prefer this to any of the current ceramic Daytonas. The 5-digit for me is the generation of Daytona to seek, mostly because in my case, the hand-wound ones have already left Earth and crossed into the Rubicon, but also because I think it is by now an iconic reference. Rolex will never go back to sourcing, wow, even sticker on the back, look at that, sourcing a chronograph movement from another maker. So in the long run, this will be the one to get. I think they are beautiful and very versatile, both with the black and white dial.
Now this one has a little bit of a less of mass, I would say, in each one of these links. So it does have a little bit of the jangle that some of the older Rolex collectors really love. But just a really cool watch. I mean, yes, it's hyped, but as far as the symmetry between these lines right across here, and then if you cut it straight down,
yes, sir,
you've got it completely symmetrical.
Yeah, which is, again, I know caliber 4130 is a great caliber. It's one of those things historically that has started the in-house made movement craze. It's the piece and the hype watch that started the vertical integration mythology. It is the original hype watch, but yes, this particular piece that was introduced in 1988 continued its production until we reached the new millennium. Has such beautiful aesthetics, great proportions, and most importantly, has those cross sections that coincide beautifully, as JB described. And as a vintage romantic, I also like the fact that the running seconds is at 9 o'clock rather than at 6. So I appreciate this piece a lot. So hopefully JB didn't have to leave abruptly and can come back. JMB says super mint condition. Congratulations, man. It's a beautiful. What do you think, Mitch? I know I'm particularly asking you because you are not a Daytona guy at all, even less than I am.
Yeah, I don't want to come off as a negative Nancy. No, I mean, I think it looks great. I think I was talking about this with somebody else here, to make a long story short, and we kind of agreed that the stainless steel Daytonas have a little bit more of a special charm to them than the ceramics. and they just seem to age and patina a little bit better, obviously. Although it's hard to say how a modern Daytona would age, but no, I think it's a fantastic watch. I think it's obviously iconic, one that you can flex on the poor people with, and I think it's definitely a fine example of a very iconic and historic watch.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it. Again, I've said a lot of what I needed to say about that. JB, what do you think? What led you to this specific watch? What what turned you towards the 5-digit? Are you there?
So, yeah, I think at a certain point, I would be a buyer if I could find one of these that's in a very, very good condition. This is one of the more faked watches that's ever been out there. So that was a concern. So I bought it from, I'd say, a reputable source, and with the sticker on it and the hang tag and everything that it came with. This feels more like my watch instead of wearing maybe a vintage watch that was certainly worn by someone else. And so.
Oh, no, I wasn't even asking about the specific example. I'm asking about what made you choose the 5-digit rather than ceramic bezel Daytona, perhaps.
Well, I have a ceramic bezel Daytona. So when I purchased this one, I think maybe he's working backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get an older one that was in really nice condition. I love the kind of the history of the Zenith part, and they're not making more of these. So if I have a great example of one of these, then I'm gonna wear it, give it some love.
Very nice, very nice. Well, wear it in great health, both of them. I'm again, I'm a huge fan of both, and I guess for obvious reasons, my pick is the Daytona between these two. But that's because I have a very specific reference when it comes to the Breitling Navi timer, which I love dearly, which is 806, that runs on a Venus 178 movement. The original Navi timers had come out with the Vajra 72 and slowly evolved aesthetically and technically into that reverse panda look. The twin jet look, which yours has as well, the twin jet logo is my preference. I love it. I also love simply that that's kind of reverse panda look that has both the creamier subdials as well as the slide rule for the outer periphery of the dial. It's a very iconic watch. I wanted to show also very quickly the miles photos. I have this one was the first one, which shows it less. This is Miles playing I think this is a gig in Paris, if I'm not mistaken, but he's wearing a double-breasted full pinstripe suit and wearing his Navi timer. And here's another shot, which is a little easier to tell that it's an 806 because first of all, because I think it's too early of a date, but also because it doesn't have the date window. And you can see it here as well, although there's a little bit of shine. Yeah, great piece. Yeah, both great watches. Just because I think for the Daytona, for the automatic Daytona, that's the iconic reference. But in either case, the 7806 is a great Navi timer reference as well.
For sure. Thanks for allowing me to come on and show it and share it. This will probably be the one I'll be running with for quite a while.
Yeah, it's it's amazing. Again, I'm glad. Hopefully this won't get me in trouble with the rest of the family or the wife in particular, Mrs. JB. But I feel myself as an enabler in this whole thing too, both in terms of the choice of reference, but also because you dipped your toes in the auction circuit as well. So hopefully I'm in still good stead.
Definitely don't be taking loans out or putting this on a credit card. I think that less than 5% of your assets should really be in anything like this, like luxury goods. Certainly, you don't want to be leveraged where you're watch rich and cash poor. So don't ever get in that spot. Yeah.
But Ozzy has an interesting question. If you are planning to jump off, and we're closing soon at any rate, what happens to the Tudor Black Bay Chrono?
I have it. I still wear it. I love it.
Give it to the gardener.
Yeah.
Take it down to the homeless shelter and give it away.
These are two others that are white that are maybe in the ooh. Yeah, I'm a couple of seconds behind on seeing this, but great timing for the holidays. Basil's, happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas. One other one that's in the cycle.
Yes.
Aquaterra. This one, I'm telling you, this one's hard to take off. This one is super sleek. Rubber band on it. I get going on this one for a couple of days and I won't take it off. This is one where you kind of forget about it. Cool rubber band on this one and really cool case back on it as well. If you can see the finishing on this, they took their time on this.
The machines.
The machines took their time. They had to do more drilling than the last machine, maybe, but but not every. There's other watches that don't have it finished like this, and just on the band, this one is quite cool.
I think the Aquaterra is an underrated watch, especially in that particular configuration on the rubber.
Yes, sir.
And I like watch.
Not too many, so they don't have too many of these that have orange on them. So they've got a Planet. What is the 42 mil? That's a little bit bigger than this. That's the diver they have that has some orange on it. But yeah, orange is kind of my thing. I've got a couple of orange features on the watch.
By the way, Ozzy is committing some heresy in the chat by saying the Tudor Black Bay Chrono looks better than the 16520.
Delusional fantasist.
I have to just announce an absolute rule that's unimpeachable and unquestionable. Nothing with a date window can look better than something without a date window and has that sort of perfect dial. So that's a rule. Don't question it. Therefore, the 16520 looks better. I honestly, from a personal perspective, I just can't bear chronographs with a date window. I think it really interrupts something that's quite coherent about the design and functions about the watch. I just don't care for it. But anyway, of course, your preference is your preference.
Certainly, in the Daytona, the Daytona doesn't have it. Tudor has it. The manual wind Breitling has got it at the 430 position, which is not as bad. But yeah, in chrono, it does kind of get in the way a little bit. But
Yeah. Again, that's kind of my rule and my absolutely subjective and very tainted opinion. But hey, Aussie.
Hey, congrats, JB, on the beautiful piece. I'm sure you've been looking around for quite some time to get something like that.
Thank you.
There we go. Just doing a little daddy daycare time.
Yeah.
She's learning how to crawl.
Have you gotten all of your Christmas shopping done?
No, but at the same time, I've got enough responsibilities already. I'm okay. Like someone didn't get Christmas presents, they're gonna have to live with it. I'm normally pretty generous throughout the year, so it's not. It'll be forgivable if I do otherwise. But yeah, I like that Black Bay Chrono. It's looking really good.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a big guy. So on this one, I mean, if you think of the Daytona sides, you don't have this on the side of a Daytona.
Yeah.
Right?
I think most lay people would say the Black Bay Chrono looks better.
You think so?
I think so. I think it obviously lay people prefer a larger size, and so that's what you get. And it's pretty. It's really pretty.
Is it just lay people who think size matters? No, joking aside, I mean, lay people also buy Michael Kors watches, so who cares what they think?
They do. They do.
It doesn't feel as big as it is on the wrist, to be honest, though.
I have tried it on. It's not unruly.
Yeah. You wear it for a day or so, I think you get used to it. It feels good. It feels solid on the wrist. And I don't wear too many formal shirts, especially perhaps I wouldn't probably choose this watch if I was wearing a real formal shirt, but it doesn't quite get in the way of like a jacket or a cuff as much as you would think. It's big and much bigger than, kind of the smooth over sides that you would get on the Daytona right around here that would, just start to indent. But I liked it, and I was going to buy one as soon as I got a chance to buy one anyway. I mean, I really wanted to buy. I wanted this watch, the Tudor Black Bay Chrono, as soon as I saw it. It's got a little bit of the throwback to the 6.2, 6.3, where two of the three sub.
Yes.
Very, very similar, right? So you've got two of these on each side, where almost identical to the early Daytonas.
Yes, yeah. I was thinking with my collection, I would love, and I don't care that there's a price discrepancy in the swap. I'd love to swap my 3861 Speedmaster for just the black version of that Black Bay Chrono. I like your Panda better, but just in my collection, I don't need another Panda.
Right.
And I'd love to have a black Chrono, and I think that Black Bay Chrono is the better black Chrono. Oh, hey, how about 116520 in black? That's cool too.
Yep. I mean, that's on the list. I mean, for sure. I would like that one. But if you remember, in my collection, I do have a black dial Daytona. So
yes,
it's not completely checked off yet. But 116520. I mean, I would have to be the next 5 years or be Aussie to get one.
Well, I mean, I think honestly, in the 5 digits. They are both great watches, black or white. I think the white dial is a little more versatile. Seeing it on your wrist, I don't think that bracelet is coming off anytime soon. But that's the kind of watch that you can easily wear on a nice, classy leather band, and it would look great. Because of its size, side profile, proportions in general. That's a watch that works great on that oyster bracelet, of course, but can also work on a leather strap too. Whereas the black dial is perhaps a little more classic Rolex, very sporty looking, and not sure if it is just as classy from the perspective of my take on a leather strap. So I think this is the more versatile and in a way more elegant piece from the 5 digit generation.
Yeah. I haven't worn it once because I had it, I guess, in unboxing mode, but I'm excited to wear it. I understand that, the outside of this gets dented a little bit easily, but
It's okay.
I think the white dial is a lot more unisex, and there's a piece that is important enough to hand down. Maybe there might be generations after you that are not swinging a dick.
yeah.
like the intended person to inherit this panda here will be this girl here eventually.
Oh yeah, not the gold.
Because I don't know. I don't think my wife's going to give up any of her watches ever.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to share it with you. I'll be back on.
Today, I wanted to talk about. Oops. Pardon me.
And good to see you all. Merry Christmas to you all, and whatever you're celebrating.
Merry Christmas, JB.
Merry Christmas, JB.
Congratulations.
And wear both of your new watches in great health. Thank you for sharing with us.
Having me on.
Meech, I got a question for you.
Yeah, what's that?
So I got good noises from my AD about hot Daytona. I know you're not a Daytona guy, but maybe that's a perfect person to ask the question to. In terms of the category of Daytonas that are very hard to get, anything with a meteorite dial, the two Platonas, which ones do I ask for? All of them? The first one that hits is good, or do I have to say it's meteorite or bust, or is it Platona or bust? Like, what do you think is the go? Because if I go there on the 28th, I might actually get something. Might actually happen.
So the question is you go for a meteorite or Platona? Is that the question?
Yeah. Well, but in reality, it may come down to luck. As in, if I just say all of the above, it may increase my chances, but I'll end up getting any of the above. But is the question, should I avoid the Platona? Avoid the Platona unless it comes with diamonds, or just hold out for a meteorite dial?
You don't want to upstage Ponticello. So, I mean, I got to be frank and honest with you. I think the meteorite dial is a little cooler. Just in general, it doesn't matter the brand. It doesn't matter if it's Rolex, Omega, Patek. I think meteorite dials are a little bit more rare to see in the wild. And you definitely have that. It's not loud, but it's also not discreet by any means. As where, like, if you get a Platona, I mean, yeah, it looks cool and everything. I mean, have you even had a Platona on the wrist? I mean, would you be comfortable with the weight?
No. I think Bird weighed his, and it was not any different to the gold, despite him trying to prove it wasn't fake. I'm like, that's only 10 grams off my wife's gold one. That doesn't seem right, but anyway.
Loose Tooth, $4.99. Like these daytime streams, thanks. They're gonna continue with a slight difference, of course, once I make it back to the West Coast. But I'm gonna try to do more of these. Here's my take, Ozzy, if you care for it.
Yeah.
I think I would do Platona, and it has a lot to do with the product cycles as well.
Mm-hmm.
It'll
be discontinued.
Yeah, it will have been 10 years. And after the 10th year of that, even if they don't come up with something new, there's a good chance that it will go away, and it will go away for good. And if you decide at some point you want one, you will have to seek one out, and it might be prohibitively expensive. I mean, again, not because you can't afford it, but because that would be too much money for you to part with, perhaps, right?
Yeah. No, these are very expensive pieces. Even the MSRP scares me, even though it would be a bargain in either case. MSRP officially for the Platona is 75.7K, according to the latest sheet from Rolex, and for the diamond dial 82K, while the Oysterflex one, I think, would still only be about 34K. Oysterflex meteorite. So
Right.
there's a huge amount of money
Yeah.
to pony up between those two. And I think, to be honest, I think both have a future, but everyone keeps calling for the discontinuation. I mean, everyone thought the original Kermit was going to be done or dusted after 2 to 3 years or something.
Right.
And then it came out with, in my opinion, an even better watch in the next iteration with the Hulk. So
Yeah.
betting on Rolex is like betting on counting on the government to do something.
Very good. I mean, not only because I share the political opinion as well, but going back to that again, I have no inside information. Don't mistake it for someone else. Mine is a pure guess. I will never pretend on this channel. My friend told me, it's going to be discontinued. No, but I do have an idea about Rolex's production cycles, roughly, historically speaking, 10, 12, maybe 13 years, and then they do something about it. Since this was released as an anniversary model, we know for sure that those get eventually discontinued. But like you said, sometimes they're replaced with something that is at least more desirable to you, if not objectively better.
It's true.
But yes, I mean, that doesn't change the fact, though, that once this gets discontinued, it will be kind of a future collectible. And for that reason,
for sure.
Retain some sort of value on the secondary market. But like you said, it is a huge consideration between 35,000, which is already a lot of money for a single watch, and 75,000. There's an ocean. So
it's a massive ocean. Like the Platona could gain, but it has a lot to lose. While it's very hard for the meteorite to lose because it's so close to just a regular Daytona price.
It might also take a lot of money for it to gain anything, a lot of time for it to gain anything at all. JakeBrooks, 1999. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, Panda. But thank you, JB, first and foremost. Hey,
I mostly worry the Platona is too similar to just a steel ceramic. It's got a different dial, but that might be the only visual difference.
All right. Any last words, Ozzy and Meech, before I close?
No? I don't know. I want to antagonize Meech, but I'm at a loss.
maybe behind the scenes you can work on that, because I do have to prepare and leave. It's my last night in New York, so I'll be meeting a couple of people. So happy holidays, love you all.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa. Thank you all for being here. Eric says happy holidays to all of you. Wear your 2 new watches in great health, JB, and great wealth. Hopefully
stay away from water.
We'll see you we'll see more of you in the future. Again, thank you so much for the super chats. Loose Tooth, JB, of course, and Floodland with the super sticker. I appreciate you all, and thank you, my panelists, Ozzy, Meech, and earlier, JB. Thank you so much for helping me run the stream today. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.